What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you for tuning in on this Wednesday, June 3rd, for our second show of the day. Maxwell Britten with the Django in New York City is on with us. Maxwell, I'm excited to talk with you, my friend. How you doing today?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm great. This show, through all this crazy shit, is like therapy for me. I get to talk to amazing people across the country, hell, in other countries as well, and just get so inspired and fired up and learn a lot. So I am lucky, my friend, and I'm excited to talk with you. This has been a long time coming.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to share your journey a little bit and then find out what's happening with you in New York, good, bad, and different, all of it. So let's start where we always like to start. Let's take us back a little bit, a little origin story. You're from Arizona originally. Talk about how Arizona hospitality gets you to New York. Kind of take us on a couple minutes of that journey.
All right. Yeah. Let's see. I think my story is pretty similar to a lot of other people's stories in hospitality.
Sure.
I don't think every one of us were born thinking that we were going to be a part of an amazing hospitality industry later on in life.
Yeah.
So for me, just like everybody else, I started out, working at the bottom as a busboy at Arizona's oldest Mexican restaurant called El Charro. And the original location is in Tucson, downtown Tucson in Arizona. It's still there.
How long has it been there?
I think since like 1923.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been there for a really long time. And I was working as a busboy there, and then I would sometimes moonlight as a bar back. They would let me do that from time to time when maybe somebody didn't show up or something, and they would actually turn it into like a nightclub on Fridays and Saturday nights. So it was like a family restaurant by day, and then it would like masquerade as this nightclub that the local radio station would sponsor on Friday and Saturday nights. And and we were doing we were doing some stuff that's happening now that's still kind of new, like draft margaritas and stuff. We were making fresh margaritas and stuff, and maybe got into a little trouble doing some stuff with that. But it was my first foray into getting behind the bar. I was 16 years old when I first started, and then I moved on to working as a bar back in some other restaurants in Tucson. One place that's still there also called Pastiche. I worked there as a bar back as well. And then when I was 18 years old, I decided I was moving to New York City, and not really with too much purpose or too much direction. It was just
going to the city.
Yeah. I took an Amtrak from downtown Tucson to Penn Station. And it was I think it was like an $80 one-way train ticket. And 3 days, went through the South. I got to stop in New Orleans for 12 hours. That was my first time in New Orleans. Got to get off the train and hit Bourbon Street for a little bit, and then back on and headed over to New York City after that.
Wow, it's just a starry-eyed 18-year-old kid going to the big city, on the train. I mean, man, it's like all the cliches that you could fit into one.
Oh yeah, every single one. Yeah, and I mean, additionally, the story of literally having no money. I think my parents were probably kind of like, all right, well, you'll be back in a couple months or whatever. You're gonna run out of money,
right?
Because I remember I came with like $500 and like a couple boxes and a duffel bag, and never looked back.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, look, in New York City, you can get a slice on the cheap still to this day, which is crazy to me. Yeah. You can't get a shoebox to live in for $500. So unbelievable. I love the gusto. You're just like, I'm fucking going for it. I'm going to do this. And so talk about those early days. I mean, now you're in a completely different landscape. The family Mexican restaurant / nightclub is a whole different ballgame there. What was your first entry point? Talk to us about that a little bit. I'm fascinated.
For hospitality, my first job in New York was actually in Long Island. So I was in New York for about a month, and then I found a house sitting gig on the North Fork of Long Island, which is basically the opposite of the Hamptons. It splits into two. There's the north and the south. South is where like Montauk is and stuff. I was on the other side of the bay, and I landed myself a serving job at a diner on Main Street called the Coronet. And it had a soda counter, and I was a soda jerk over there.
Oh, love that.
Yeah, it was cool. So I was 18 years old and living out there on the Long Island, and serving up pancakes and sodas and stuff like that to all the fishermen. My shifts usually started at like 6:30 in the morning, and then I would work until about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And I just did that for the whole summer, and I made a lot of money. I saved up enough to move to Harlem, and then moved down to the city. And then my first job working in the city was working as a cocktail server at Club 4040, which is Jay-Z's club, just across the street from Madison Square Park, where the original Shake Shack is.
Yeah.
I lasted there.
I've been to that Shake Shack many times. So when you said the other side of the bay, is that like the other side of the tracks? Like you're definitely not.
It's not. I mean, there's still a lot of wealthy people. It's
gotcha.
Still
all right.
Still a very beautiful place, but it's not. It's a little bit more of like the working man's Hamptons, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. It's real shit. There's real stuff going on there. There's, I can appreciate that. So that gets you into cocktail side, right? Which then you became prolific on the cocktail side. That's where probably a lot of people would know you from. It's behind the stick at, a lot of iconic spots type thing. What was the breakout moment for you? What was the spot where like, oh, people know me now? Like I'm Maxwell Britten is becoming a brand. Like as that started to happen, you very much had the timing of like mixologists, and there was a shift. Like chefs started it of the celebrity within restaurants, and then very much bartenders took that and ran with it as well. So talk about that moment where you're like, oh, I have a little bit of clout now. Like what the hell does that mean?
Well, it was a pretty awesome moment, man. I got to say, like, I think it was a lot of luck. I got really lucky because I was in New York just I had good timing, Yes. I got to New York in 2005, and I think it was around like 2006. I started working at this neighborhood restaurant in Brooklyn Heights called Jack the Horse Tavern, which is still there. Chef owner, he used to work at a really well-known place that belonged to Danny Meyer called Tabla. He worked with Chef Floyd Cardoz, who we've sadly lost to COVID-19. But I even though I never worked for Danny Meyer, there was a lot of those values that were going on there, and there was just a lot of that kind of like sense of culinary pride and ingredient. Like
are you a 51%er? It feels like you probably are a 51%er, all of Danny Meyer.
What does that mean? I don't know that.
Oh yeah, that's Danny Meyer talks about people who are 51%ers. Now you got homework. Now you got to go listen to or read Setting the Table.
I must have read. I definitely read Setting the Table, but it's been so long.
I know it. I just listened to it on Audible again, so all of a sudden, like I know what I'm talking about. But 51%ers give 51% and only ask for 49% kind of scenario. And so hospitality is so important. It's like you got to think about the other side first. So anyway, we digressed, but yes. Yeah. So that was a moment for you where you started to realize there was some momentum. And so I'm interested in that because a lot of us in the industry have done really well with that. Myself and many others at times have let that go to my head and read way too many clippings and thought we were super important and fucking fancy, like all of that. So talk about that for you at that moment. Kind of how did you use this newfound superpower and attention,
Man, well, there's a lot of stuff that happened in between, but basically what happened was, I was 20 years old, I think, and I was given the opportunity to manage this bar. And at the time, there was no cocktail bars in Brooklyn. In Manhattan, there was Milk and Honey, Flatiron Lounge, and Pegu Club. Those were the top 3 spots. And then Death and Company came just a little bit after that. But it wasn't happening in Brooklyn, and I wanted to do it in Brooklyn. So, I was, running one of the first restaurant cocktail bar programs where there was, fresh juice and infusions and homemade bitters and all the stuff that was really trendy back then. And I was lucky enough because the community was so small. There was people like Audrey Saunders and Dale DeGroff and David Wondrich and all these people that are, giants in the industry, and they were giants to me back then. But they were so much more accessible. And so I had just this like amazing group of mentors that even though I wasn't in one of the elite cocktail bars at the time, they would just wanted the movement to grow. And so they were all about, bushy-eyed young guys like me, trying to make a name for themselves. And so that led to my first national accolade was Star Chefs. You're probably aware of that one. So I got the Star Chefs Bartender of the Year in 2009. And that was the first like national accolade I ever got. And before that, I was like getting into Time Out Magazine and New Yorker and stuff like that. It was all just really new to me, man. I was just in love with it. I didn't really know what to do with it, but I just knew that I loved it and I wanted to take people with me,
Talk about some of those mentors, because knowing several of those guys and many others, Sean Kenyon, Brian Dayton, some of the guys in Denver that, you know, are at that level, are so quick to be like, I mentioned fancy. They're like, no, don't get fancy. Make me one of these 5 drinks. Don't overthink it. All of these different things. It only matters what the guest experience is. I think about a lot of that. Definitely taking us down a peg every once in a while. Be like, don't get too, you know, high on your own supply.
Yeah.
Are there any moments of interacting with some of those guys where you're like that? I still say that to my guys now because I took that away from that moment.
Yeah, I remember I was in one of the first cocktail competitions I was in. It was 42 Below vodka brand, and they had this big global cocktail competition. And Gary Regan, also somebody really important in hospitality and in bartending that we lost in this past year, not related to coronavirus, but he was one of the judges. And I was doing this like riff on a Ramos Gin Fizz, where I did like a root beer reduction syrup or some shit like that. And he was just so pissed off. He was just kind of like, what the fuck is this? This is like, why are you doing all these things? What's the point? Why, you know? And I just remember kind of like walking away from it all and being like, yeah, there's something to that, you know, like why, like what are the reasons you're doing these things to your drinks? Like there should be something that people can relate to. And, you know, you see a lot of that stuff now, but, you know, I even get bothered by it, you know, where it's just sort of like, no, man, like try to stick to the classics and do those things really well. You know, like we can still do interesting techniques and utilize all types of methodology. But at the end of the day, bartending is really just about like fundamentals.
Yes. Yeah. So let's go with that. I really like where we're at right now, because now you're a leader of teams, right? Partner within a concept. Maison Premier was a place that really kind of, for me, was the first place that I was like, oh, this guy's like doing something super interesting, different. You found like your groove, because we're trying so hard to prove ourselves in those early days. And then a lot of times we just simplify it and say, this is the purest form of what my expression is within like the methodology, the techniques, and so on and so forth. Now you're doing that for others. So let's talk about your team a little bit. We talk about Unsung Hospitality Heroes, all of the people in the trenches that actually make shit happen that so many of us don't know about. We just mentioned a lot of people that everybody who's on the cocktail side absolutely knows about, many people on the restaurant side. But let's talk about when you're leading the 18-year-old you now. Who is that person that you have on your team currently or have had over the years that you just like remember? And how are you now as a leader kind of guiding them through the pitfalls of the root beer reduction?
Yeah, sure. Well, the first person that comes to mind is a guy that's actually been working for me for almost like 8 or 9 years now.
Wow.
And he started working for me as a bar back at Maison Premier. His name is Tyrone The Rush. And he came in one day. We were desperate. We didn't have any bar back coming in for the shift of that day. And so it was probably like noon. We were talking, and I was telling him like, this is going to be the hardest bar backing job there is in New York City. Like we're talking 14-hour long shifts. We're talking just like everything that you could possibly imagine. You're basically going to be eating shit. And if you want this job, then come back here in 2 hours with this uniform and I'll give you a shot. And we basically have been working together ever since.
Wow.
So he worked as a bar back for almost 3 years and then got promoted to bartending. And he's basically followed me everywhere I've gone since then.
So let's go back 3 years. You just said 3 years as a bar back. When somebody thinks as a bar back, you're like the help of the help. Like it's like you are like swabbing the decks, you know, is the mentality. And sometimes it actually is swabbing the deck, so to speak. 3 years. Sometimes when you think of that, you're like, well, they're in it, they love it, they're so passionate, but maybe they just don't have the talent or the charisma to be a bartender. But he became a bartender, so clearly he had it. It didn't take 3 years to develop that side of it.
Right.
Why was it important for him to take that journey?
Right.
And how did he not go to another bar and say, I can get a bartending job and make more money now because I have street cred from Maison Premier? Like that dynamic. Give us a glimpse into that a little bit.
I mean, to be honest, man, I think we were kind of all drinking a little bit of KoolAid. So, you know, like at a certain point for almost everybody on that team for many years, you know, it wasn't really about, the money. It was really just about this like obsession with creating these, beyond life experiences that we could give to people by coming to our bar. And so yeah, we were just really into it, and we had just such a strong team of people. That team that we had, none of us went anywhere for years. Like I ran that bar for 6 years, and there's still dudes that that I hired that are still on that team doing their thing that we started back in 2011.
Wow.
And so there just wasn't really openings available, like none of us were going anywhere. And that's kind of when that was kind of when I saw that it was time for me to go and start doing my own thing, because as long as I was there, no one else was going anywhere either.
Sure. Yeah.
And so anyways, I had to convince him to be a bartender. He didn't want to do it. I was just kind of like, you can't keep on bar backing. Like I need you to get to this next level. And I had to force him to do it. And
was he, what was it? Let's talk about that dynamic a little bit. Because he had the talent, he had the dedication, the hard work, all of the boxes were checked. Was he not comfortable on stage? But still, as a barback, you're on stage too. You might be able to reflect every once in a while.
Yeah.
What was that dynamic that was holding him back?
I think it was just sort of like a sense of confidence, and maybe a sense of feeling of belonging there, and I mean, I'm not one to get into these kinds of politics because it's not my place to say it, but there's not that many Black people that are, professional bartenders. And, that could have been, one reason. There's not a lot of people that are kind of in that place in our field. That's something that I really wanted to see. And so I was really just trying to convince him, man, like, you got to do this. You need to go to the next level. You've been working so hard. You're building a career. Let me support you as best as I can. And, to this day, he's still one of the fastest, most badass bartenders that, I've ever had on my team.
I absolutely love everything that you just said. It's all the things that matter in our industry.
Yeah.
You challenged somebody and said, this is going to be the hardest job you've ever had. You're going to be swabbing the decks, as I keep joking about, but like in it all the way, the dedication to stay with one job, because we're so transient, right? Like, I mean, hell, right before all of this crazy shit happened, the average restaurant tenure of an employee was 56 days. Like, it was crazy, right? Like, people just are getting chummed up and all of that. So keeping somebody for 3 years, then you decide you're ready, and you've probably been ready for 2 years, but I'm not going to let you not take this next step.
Yeah.
And so you like push them. And then you're also very aware of like, there is some like institutional bias, and there is some optics to all of that. And did it take a while, even once he was a bartender, for him himself to get over it? Because I'm sure the team was like, you're the best, you have to do this.
Yeah.
Did it take a while, or was it like, yep, I was always meant to be an actual bartender for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think, every bartender has a different personality, and, obviously what everybody wants in a bartender is to be somebody who's like, really exciting and gregarious and, just kind of like full of
life of the party.
Yeah. And that's just not his personality. And, I think it just took a little while to realize like, hey, you don't have to be that person. Like there are different kinds of bartenders that can still serve the same exact role of providing great service and providing good hospitality. And it's just all about kind of finding like, where does your personality fit in there? And you can still be yourself. And that was really kind of like the thing that we needed to get past, was just kind of like, dude, I don't want you to be me. I don't want anybody, like everybody can be who they are. Like that's not the expectation. The expectation is to be able to, challenge yourself and grow as a professional, because I can't sit here, and I literally said this to him, I can't sit here and watch you just do this for years and years and years without growing more. Like you can't stop here. You have to keep on going.
Oh, it's so good. Sophie, make sure you get that soundbite that Maxwell just dropped, because like, you got to be you is the most important thing for anybody in any industry doing anything. And especially when you are interacting with people in hospitality, that if we can encapsulate that and have more people in our industry, like be you within whatever your expression of hospitality is within this team, what an unlock that would be. And so where can they go? Let's talk about Django and everything else. Where can they go and see him on stage, so to speak, him behind the stick?
Well, I think like that was definitely a great time and a great transition for both of us, because him and I, we'd be cleaning up the bar at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and just exchanging our favorite hip hop albums with each other and just kind of like just talking about music all night long. And that's where we would always just like really lock in with each other. So, when I told him that I was opening up a jazz club / cocktail bar in downtown Manhattan, I was like, and I want you to be the first person on my team. There's no questions asked, just like the first time, he came on board with us at Maison Premier. And I think that was kind of what we both needed and what he needed to kind of push him over. It's like kind of like being in an environment where there's more things that he felt passionate about, more comfortable with, kind of like coaxed him into, making that transition. So yeah, that was a totally crazy thing. The Django at the Roxy is at the Roxy Hotel, downtown Manhattan. I had never worked in a hotel before, but I always really wanted to make that transition from restaurants and bars, and kind of like, to me, I always sort of saw like hotels as like the big league. So, being able to find a business partnership like this was just a major opportunity, and to be able to create something that didn't exist yet. There are some jazz clubs in New York City that are in hotels. There's the Carlisle, which has a Bemelman's bar, and they have a Cafe Carlisle there as well, where they do a lot of really awesome shows. And it's one of my favorite bars in New York City. But other than that, there's nothing really downtown. There's nothing that's like below 23rd Street where anybody like you and I would ever bother going to. And then all the other jazz clubs, a lot of them are kind of like touristy type spot. Like you see a lot of backpacks and flip-flops and things like that. And I really wanted to create like a classic New York City jazz club cocktail bar experience. And, we were given that opportunity. Like I said, no idea what I was doing in a hotel. Never ran a music venue before. My only qualifier was that I ran a great little cocktail bar, 800 square foot cocktail bar in Brooklyn. Yeah. That kind of like got me over the bridge into this hotel in Tribeca.
Oh, I absolutely love that. And I'm thinking about that when you said flip-flops and all that, because this is actually the most dressed down I've ever seen you, right? Yeah. Like you're a dapper dude, like for sure.
A haircut too.
Yeah. And so you're really trying to create this like high touch hospitality, this sense of elegance, experiential, taking people very much off the streets of New York and kind of taking them somewhere else, so to speak. And so that, for you, the hotel was kind of the venue for that, because especially on the cocktail side, it's interesting because on the straight food restaurant side, a lot of times the hotel restaurant is looked down upon. Yet on the cocktail side, a lot of the most classic places, iconic places across the world, and including in New York City, are in those hotel cocktail joints. So like it was a dream come true for you. Now thinking about the kind of experience that you're creating and the team that you're building there, give people a little bit more of a sense of like what they're going to walk into when they come to the Django.
So it's a subterranean cellar level jazz club.
Subterranean, that just sounds fucking crazy.
Yeah, so you have to descend some stairs, go through the front lobby area of the Roxy Hotel. You go down the stairs, and then there's just this little door right there with a big sign with a lot of lights on it that say the Django. You walk in through a little Byzantine like vestibule, and you kind of enter this really large space where there's tons of two tops and banquettes and a really big stage with a Steinway piano and a Django branded drum set. We've got bartenders behind the bar just slinging all types of cocktails and wine, and people just watching live music and having a great time while they're doing it.
I love that. Your team, let's talk about kind of the team that you've created, because you really, and thank you for that. You articulated well why it was so important for you to kind of cultivate a single person, yet I know you're doing that at scale when you're talking about kind of your entire team. So maybe give us a couple of nuggets of a little bit more of the leadership as you're thinking about how you're developing a team, because that team mentality and the team dynamic is the whole game in hospitality. And especially in this moment with COVID and how crazy it is, and you guys are shut down, like leadership and camaraderie is more important than ever. So give us some of your kind of like leadership thinking and how you're developing your teams, and then maybe a little bit on how you're thinking about that kind of coming out of this pandemic.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think for us, one of the things that I learned in building teams really early on, especially in New York City, where before all this occurred, it was really kind of like an employees market, you know, where New York City is so saturated with amazing restaurants, amazing bars, bartenders, and chefs, where, you know, you come with any amount of skill or experience, like you're going to be a very coveted individual in New York. And for most of my career in New York, it's been really difficult to find great people because everyone's spoken for. Everyone's working for Danny Meyer and Tom Colicchio and Daniel Hum and, you know, guys like that, which is awesome. And, you know, for me, I kind of realized that like I wasn't going to attract people like that. And so we needed to build those people. And so that's kind of why we started creating systems like the one that, you know, that we did with Tyrell, you know, where it's like, we're going to start you out as a barback and I'm going to completely invest myself in you. I'm going to give you every single thing I know. And as long as you believe in me, I'm going to believe in you. And we're going to grow together. And so that's what I've had to do with so many people. And I've watched a lot of them go on to do amazing things. And some of them are still, you know, kind of in my fold, in my family. But that's kind of what's occurred at the Django as well. And you always have to have a mix of people. Like you can't just start out with everybody being, you know, green behind the ears.
Sure. You need a couple assassins, some mercenaries too.
Yeah. That's the way we've always done it. You know, where like you build it around some people that can set some examples, and then, you know, then you create a relationship with people who are looking for an opportunity, that are looking for a chance. And that's what I relate to, because when I came to New York, I didn't have that. I wasn't here. I didn't have any New York City experience, and I just needed somebody to give me a chance. So to me, that's kind of like what it's all about. And it is very hard, you know, to go down that road. But at the end, I think it pays off a lot more, because you're going to have people that are there for you forever, you know, and you can't put value on that. So yeah, that's been kind of like my overall strategy. We've got some great people on my team. My general manager, Jack Zemke, he's been pretty ride or die for the last couple years. He has a very interesting background. He was a part of the aviary team here in New York for a while, and also worked at a great fine dining establishment called Bet Me, which you might be familiar with. So he kind of came in with some really interesting experience and some different ideas, and we were able to collaborate on a lot of things. But where we aligned with each other was the same philosophy that we had about kind of like creating systems for growth. And so we've just identified just some really great core players. Our administrative assistant is a woman named Taylor Vranish. I think has a background mostly as an artist, and, you know, has done some work as a cocktail waitress. And we identified that she was basically a ninja in the office, and kind of like helping us run things from the business administrative side. And she has like really, really helped us develop and grow. And she's also kind of one of those people that's really great about accountability, which is kind of like one of the most important things that you need to have when creating a successful team, is you got to make sure everyone's holding each other accountable. Yes. And so, you know, it's with these three people specifically, I would say, you know, kind of really have those values. And, you know, that's kind of how you build it. That's how you create culture.
It's the whole game, is creating that foundational culture. And it's so easy for that to go by the wayside so often in this industry, because you get so chummed up. I mean, literally the thesis of this show is for us to value and focus on why and who before what and how, because we get so caught up in the what and the how. And if we get too caught up in the what and the how, we're all making root beer reduction cocktails all over the place, right? Like, so, you know, Tyrell matters. Like, that's what matters. And I think that's super important. So I really, really appreciate that. Maybe some parting thoughts, just thinking about kind of getting the team back to work. I know you mentioned July 1st is when the hotel's opening back up. What's that moment going to mean for the team? Just give us a quick little like synopsis of that for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a little bit more of a pregnant pause for us, because the hotels will open on the 1st, but the Django will not be reopening until the fall. So we open just after Labor Day. Like I said, it's a subterranean jazz club, and in New York City, we've all been locked up for the last 3 months, and it's going to be beautiful weather this summer. And he's going to be opening up a lot of sidewalk and outdoor licenses for restaurants. So people are going to be outside. And so we're going to kind of let things kind of stabilize a little bit more before we come back. But there's a bigger picture for us. You know, I think it's not just about the restaurant and the bar and the hotel, but we also have a community of musicians that are also kind of a part of our fold. And so we have more than one industry to worry about. And that's, you know, also preserving the performing arts, you know, looking after those artists and trying to figure out how can we not just safely get people into the hotel to work and to dine, but also for artists to perform. And so we're spending a lot of time investing in a lot of different types of systems and equipment in order to be able to make that happen. And you know, we're all ready to go. We're all ready to do it. You know, if the opportunity was there, we would be there tomorrow. But you know, for now, it's just about kind of like safely and quietly strategizing, you know, like where's our entry point? How do we make sure that we create that sense of safety that that we've always offered, you know, in our restaurant and bar, and to bring it back in a post-pandemic world is going to be a very different thing, but we're ready for it.
Yeah, that's a big challenge actually, because live music may be one of the last things to come back. And so I'm interested in that. Real quick before we wrap up, and I'm fascinated in this now because actually my wife is an event producer and they do huge Halloween and New Year's Eve events. So now I'm selfishly asking, and I'm like, could you do a digital event? Could you like, you know, have DJs and this and that? Have you guys thought about digital landscape and any kind of hot takes that you have on that as a channel for musicians?
Yeah, we're definitely considering that. We're already sort of doing that a little bit right now. We're doing live shows on our Instagram page on Fridays at 30. We're going to actually start doing them from the Django. We've been doing them remotely from a lot of musicians' apartments. And once things start opening up in June, we're going to start to be able to get some people back in there. And so for now, it's just sort of like maintaining that presence, that digital presence, like you suggest, and making sure that, you know, we're able to make sure that people remember that, you know, there are so many residual industries that count on hospitality to be there. And the musicians that we have are what kind of champions what we can do, you know, as a cocktail bar and a restaurant. So yeah, we plan on keeping that going and going even harder throughout the summer. And we may have to continue that a little bit into our opening as well.
Give us the Instagram handle, because I really want people to go. I want to go listen to that music. And then Friday, you said at what time? Give us that again.
Friday's at 6:30. This week we're taking a break in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, but we will be returning next week with some more shows. That's the Django NYC every Friday at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time.
Okay, make sure you guys check that out. Maxwell, really appreciate the conversation. I love that we got to spend a lot of time talking about leadership, your team, Terrell. I think it's important, and clearly that is leading to and will continue to lead to your success. So thanks for the time.
Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. I really appreciate it. I know the rest of the industry does as well.
I'm grateful for the opportunity. I get to talk to you. How could I not have a good day talking to Maxwell Britten? All right. Appreciate you. Have a good one.
All right, later, man. Take care.
I just love that I get to be introduced to new people. You know, now there's a few new names that I've already forgot their full names, but that's why Sophie is right there, and she'll make sure that we get people tagged, connected, get to tell their stories, because now there's a few more unsung hospitality heroes that have been introduced to me personally, selfishly. I've been selfish twice on this show. I think actually this whole show is me being selfish. I just love and am fueled by these conversations. However, I now know a few more people that matter. They fucking matter. Like, they really do. And you can just see the way that Maxwell speaks about his team. It matters. And in this moment, when we feel so fragmented, so apart from each other, just being able to talk in this way, it matters. It does. It matters to me. I think it matters to Maxwell. It matters to his team. It matters. It matters. It matters. It really does. All right. That's it for today. Grateful I got to do 2 shows today. Caroline Glover and Maxwell Britten. Amazing stuff. Tomorrow, we're also doing 2 episodes tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're digging a little bit more, and you're going to hear this. You're not going to know what I'm talking about, the Paragon Pillars and some of the work that we're doing to kind of reimagine what's possible for the restaurant industry. We're going to have a lot of different speakers on that topic. So tomorrow, we're going to have Kaivan Kalatbadi on, who is, wow, like serial entrepreneur. He's co-founder and owner of dozen different businesses, has ran for mayor of Denver. Sexy Pizza is what we'll spend a good amount of time talking about. His pizza company that is employee owned. Very fascinated in that as well. And then we'll have Robert Bogatin on, who is with resilientrestaurants.org, who's doing a lot of work behind the scenes to kind of understand and survey and see what's happening in underserved communities, what's needed from a restaurant's standpoint to become resilient. So those are the 2 episodes tomorrow. Noon Mountain, 1 p.m. Mountain tomorrow. All right, everyone. I appreciate you.